Hello and welcome to the Dragon Ball Figuarts News Roundup, where I'll be recapping and discussing all Dragon Ball Figuarts news for the months of October and November 2021. All timestamps and links are in the description. So, let's dive into our first bit of news. And so, to start things off, for US customers, Zarbon is now officially listed on Premium Bandai. His pre-orders opened October 7th, and they closed December 19th. He will be delivered in May. Of course, with his official listing, we also have images to go over. So, let's start things off here. Of course, with the figure comes 3 extra interchangeable faceplates, 2 of which you can see right here in the center image and on the left, 2 exchangeable left hands, and 3 exchangeable right hands, along with a scouter and an extra hair piece to be able to fit said scouter, as seen on the image on the right. As you can see here, we have one of his exchangeable right hands alongside one of his exchangeable left hands. And here, the rest of Zarbon's accessories are shown. As you can see, he will be coming with the 2-star Dragon Ball, and it's a little bit hard to tell, but those are 2 open palm hands, which are the 2 other exchangeable hands that I mentioned before. Alongside this, we can see the extra 3 interchangeable faces he comes with. One smirking, yelling, teeth gritted, and a normal stern face. Here he's posed with Dodoria and the first form Frieza with his pod, which are of course sold separately. And now lastly, we have 2 pictures from the last roundup, which were once again just more pictures of him being posed with Dodoria and Frieza. As I said before, pre-orders are already open for US customers, and he will be linked below. He costs around $68 US. And as I've said before, barring the unfortunate fact this is a Premium Bandai exclusive, this is basically a perfect Zarbon figure. Couldn't really do much better other than maybe paint apps or maybe his other monstrous form. But in general, so far it seems to be a perfectly good release, especially for Zarbon fans or Namek Saga fans or just collectors overall. But anyway, moving on. Between our last roundup and now, New York Comic-Con took place, lasting from October 7th to October 10th. And with it, we got new images, new information, and quite a few potential new releases. However, before we get into all that, I just want to take a quick moment to point out the event-exclusive blue Kaioken Goku, since we won't be getting into it from here. It did get released and people did order it and everything. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it, but I thought I'd make note of it right here. There was the box, there was the figure and the effect piece. If you're more interested in that figure, check out my previous roundup, but I really won't be getting into it here. That's basically done and gone. If you're interested in it, quite a few other YouTubers have in-depth reviews on it, and you can look to see if you can get it secondhand, but yeah. Anyway, carrying on. So, to start things out, with the announcement of the new Dragon Ball Super movie, as shown here, Dragon Ball Super Superhero, still a bit of an unusual title, we have been shown quite a few new figures of characters in the film. Of course, no release information has been given on these figures yet, so we'll have to wait and see for any product details or what they come with, or obviously when they come out. But we still do have quite a bit to look over, so let's get right into it, starting with Piccolo. So to start off with, here are 2 of the Piccolo images we have. Nothing too crazy. Of course, on one side we have just your normal promotional shot, while on the other side we have him posed and on display for New York Comic-Con. Only thing I really want to note starting off is of course the smirking face, which I think looks quite nice. What I really want to talk about is these comparisons. It hasn't been very long since the release of the previous Piccolo, Piccolo the Proud Namekian, back in 2020, which would lead many to believe that perhaps this new figure is just a bit of a redo or repaint or general reuse of the previous mold. However, as you can probably already tell, there are a lot of differences. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this is a mostly new figure overall. Now, I'll try and point out as many of the differences as I can notice. To start off with, one of the most direct differences is the difference in coloration. As some of you may know, the 2.0 Piccolo, Piccolo the Proud Namekian, is based off of the anime colors, with the light blue belt and the pink skin patches. However, this new Piccolo is based off of the new movie, in which they've elected to go back to the original manga coloration, with the yellow skin patches, red belt, and, not noticeable here, black nails, as opposed to the anime Piccolo's white nails. This is especially interesting in the case of Figuarts as, although I don't have a picture here to show, the very original Piccolo figure from all those years ago also had the original manga colors, before they did an event-exclusive anime color release. So, it's a very interesting way to also go back to the roots of Figuarts. However, that is definitely not the only difference. Overall sculpt between the 2 is vastly different and honestly in quite a few ways improved. There are random things to note, like the much deeper V-cut on the upcoming Piccolo, the differently sculpted pants and legs, as in the original there was a bit of a tapering off before the very end of the pants, where in the newer one it's a bit more of an abrupt stop. Unlike the other Piccolo, the upcoming one actually has separated sleeve pieces. I've mentioned this before, but quite clearly we can see the difference in head sculpt between the two Piccolos, especially with the new Piccolo coming with a smirking face, one that I think looks quite good and really stands out compared to the original Piccolo's lack of such. But the one thing I can't forget to mention, the one thing everybody's been pointing out, is the massive difference in the two shoes. Of course, I don't think I need to point these differences out, but as we can see, the new shoes are quite a lot different from the original pointier, more saturated shoes. However, one difference that isn't immediately noticeable to a lot of people, or isn't one that they immediately think of, is also the lack of a skin patch on his ankles. Now, a lot of people complain about the new shoe design. I think they look alright. Of course, I probably prefer the original shoes simply because of how classic they are to Piccolo's design as a whole, but I don't think the new ones look bad, and I think there's something that will definitely grow on people. We'll have to wait and see. One other thing I'd like to note before moving on to a different comparison is that our current Piccolo figure, and even the originals, are often criticized for being a little bit too short compared to what Piccolo's official height is supposed to be. However, this doesn't seem to be a problem with this new Piccolo, which as we can see here, is towering over both Goku and Vegeta. Moving on to a different comparison I wanted to make. With the recent Tamashii Online event, which I'll go into more later, we were able to get a 360 view of the Piccolo figure alongside the other ones. And as you can see here, we have Piccolo's official character sheet for the new movie, so I wanted to detail a quick comparison here between the upcoming figure and the actual character design in the film. Not really too much for me to mention here, everything seems to be pretty similar. Of course, character sheets aren't always exactly how the character will look in the film, especially in Dragon Ball. Things generally end up looking quite a bit different, or at least somewhat different, so this might not be the most fair comparison. However, I think overall this is doing pretty well at capturing the character design from the film. Of course, a couple things I'd like to note. First and foremost, this is actually a different head sculpt from the one we saw before. This being, as you can probably tell, a yelling head sculpt, which I think also looks quite nice. To be honest, from what we've seen so far, these head sculpts seem to be quite a bit of an improvement over the previous Piccolos, or at least the previous Piccolo's non-turban heads. The ones with the turban generally ended up looking pretty good, but the ones without them, you could see a few issues, which really makes me and a lot of people hope that we may be able to swap out these Piccolo heads, or even the arms and other pieces, to hopefully create what many would consider their perfect Piccolo figure. But we'll really have to wait and see, especially with, potentially different greens, and if we'll even be able to take off like arm pieces very easily. Usually you can, but we'll have to see how things work. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention before, but as you can see here with this character design of Piccolo, his skin patches on his arms are actually shifted compared to the other Piccolo and certain other Piccolo designs. As we can see here on the 2.0 Piccolo figure, the skin patches are on the left and right sides of each forearm, where on the upcoming figure, they're only on the front, as we can also see here in the character sheet. The one last thing I'd like to note is that on the back of the figure, it does include a little removable shirt piece. This means the figure will most likely come with an interchangeable cape, as this was the same design used by the 2.0 Piccolo and its cape. Other than that, it's hard to judge the figure until we either know more or even have it in hand with a more finalized version and away from these studio lights, which to me seem to be saturating the colors a little bit. Overall though, I think this is shaping up to be a pretty great release, and probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. Though, with Piccolo being one of my favorite characters, I am a bit biased. Now, moving right along, we have Goku and Vegeta, and we have a lot to talk about with them. Starting off here, we have these two promotional shots of them in their classic fighting poses, as well as them posed and on display at New York Comic Con. There's not much to mention here yet, so let's move straight ahead into our comparisons. So, as you may notice with this figure, the outfit very closely resembles Vegeta's Buu Saga outfit, as well as our previous Majin Vegeta figure, as seen in the image on the left. However, while the leg sculpt may be reused, the shirt is definitely new, with a much baggier and less defined look. The arms also seem to be a mostly, if not entirely new sculpt, as noted by the lack of veins. On the other side, we get a few reused parts from the Broly movie Blue Vegeta, such as the gloves, boots, and repainted head. And out of all of Vegeta's current head sculpts, I think this was definitely the best choice. In my opinion, the Blue Vegeta's head sculpts are the best the character's been released with up to this point, bar none, especially for his DBS iteration. However, I don't think it's the best head sculpt we've seen of him. More on that soon. Though the head and face are overall repaints, there is a noticeable difference in how the face's paints were applied. As you may notice, the definition and mouth on the upcoming Vegeta's face have actually been painted in black, alongside a difference in how the detailing under the eyes were painted. I think this just goes to show that even if two sculpts are the exact same, the right application of paint can make them feel much more unique. Now, the biggest question lingering about this figure, at least I think, is how accurately it actually portrays his movie design, as, up to this point, we haven't actually seen it. The only time we've seen Vegeta in the film as of now was a still frame of what seems to be his Badman outfit, so until we actually know more, we have no idea if this reused sculpting will be accurate or not, so I guess we'll see. But, for now, let's move on to our next comparison. Just a bit earlier, I brought up this Vegeta's head sculpt, and how I believed that we had actually seen a better one in the past, though it had yet to be released. To go back to that point, I wanted to bring this comparison as a bit of an evolution of Figuarts' base Vegeta head sculpts, though not including any 1.0 figures. From left to right here, we have the Figuarts 2.0 Scouter Vegeta, the upcoming movie Vegeta, and the yet-to-be slated for release Android Saga Vegeta. And while only one of these figures has been released, so far Figuarts has a slightly bad track record with base Vegeta. You see, while the Scouter Vegeta itself isn't truly a bad figure, probably its most major flaw has always been the fact that it stands out, and not in a very good way. For the saga and character design it's trying to portray, it doesn't do a very great job capturing the same level of resemblance that Figuarts has now, generally speaking, become incredibly skilled at. See, the head is simply a repaint of the Super Saiyan Vegeta figure, and the body ended up being quite a bit too large for how Vegeta looked at the time. Overall, what I'm trying to get at is that the Scouter Vegeta was just off, and not truly fitting of the character it was representing. And that's something that's been kind of consistent with Vegeta figures. Whether it came to sculpting that came out a bit too soft, or scaling inconsistencies, or any other type of problem, Vegeta figures in the line often end up feeling, again, a little off, and there's a chance that the upcoming Vegeta could end up being the same. Once again, the head sculpt is reused from a figure of a completely different form that, while similar in depiction to his base form, is generally not a one-to-one transition. Though, once again, we do not know what Vegeta will look like in the film, so it could end up actually being completely accurate. However, in stark contrast to this, we have our prototype Android Saga Vegeta, shown here on the right. Of all the Vegeta figures we've seen, prototype or final, this is far and away the most accurate and best looking sculpt we've seen for the character. The sculpting is sharp and it fits in flawlessly with the rest of the Android Saga, but despite being shown multiple times now, it still has no official information on its release. Due to all of this, I was honestly slightly disappointed when I saw that this upcoming Vegeta would be reusing the blue Vegeta's head sculpt despite its overall quality. I just feel like in some ways, I'll simply be waiting for the Android Saga Vegeta to be released either way, even if simply to do a head swap between the two figures for my own personal enjoyment. However, I don't think any of this should be used to really knock the movie Vegeta figure, as all in all, it does seem to have quite a bit of effort put into it, as I can highlight more here in the more front-facing Vegeta image. From what we've seen of it so far, this will probably turn out to be a very good release either way. I just thought this would be a pretty good time to let out my thoughts on Vegeta figures overall. But yeah, before we move on from the Saiyan Prince, I just wanted to quickly note this image here, where we can see a bit more of the sculpt and paint overall, and get more of a feel for how the figure may actually look in hand, other than the harsh lights hitting it. I think my favorite part of the figure will probably be the outfit overall, as it's perfect for a more casual outfitted figure, something I really wish we could get more of in the line. I'm still holding out for a Badman Vegeta and a 5'9" jacket Goku. But, despite how much I seem to dog on Vegeta figures, I am still looking forward to this release a lot. I do think it looks like a very good figure. I just have a lot to say about it. I think that basically sums up all my thoughts here. So, let's move on to our main character, Goku. As we'll see more easily in the next comparison, the body looks to be a repaint of the Broly movie Blue Goku, while the head seems to be taken from the Saiyan raised on Earth Goku, though with an updated smirking face sculpt. This is an expression that I felt was sorely lacking in the previous base Goku, as while its super happy, enthusiastic face was made very well, it simply didn't have the same versatility as both this Goku's smirking face and the original 1.0 base Goku's smile. Just like the movie Vegeta, the definition of the face sculpt here is also painted in black, alongside the figure's different coloration to better fit superhero style. To better demonstrate this, let's move on to the next comparison. Here, we have both Goku's actual model from the film, along with the front view of the figure. Now, to quickly note, like I said before, we have the deeper V cut in the shirt, just like with the blue Goku. But I think the more important thing to mention is the actual coloration of the figure, because so far, the 360 viewer images have looked slightly different from each of the promotional shots. There's a good chance that this may just have something to do with the lighting or how the pictures were taken, but I just wanted to note that I kind of prefer the more saturated look seen here, as opposed to what we've seen so far otherwise. I think these colors are quite perfect for the outfit, and even if it'd be slightly inaccurate to the movie, I would love for the final product to look like this. Now, while the combination of the deeper V cut and the Go kanji creates one of my favorite designs in the series, we already have that with the blue Goku figure. I kinda wish we could get a base figure of Goku from Battle of Gods and most of Dragon Ball Super. I feel as though it's quite a large portion of the series that's not fully represented in figure form outside of form or moment exclusive figures like the God or Ultra Instinct Gokus. But since the sculpt is mostly reused, they may hopefully have more time to put into the figure and possibly perfect it. We'll have to wait and see. We won't truly know what this figure will be like until we have it in hand since, again, promotional shots are always different from the final product, even if only slightly. With that, let's move on to our very last movie figures with the two new characters, Gamma 1 and Gamma 2. So, I don't really have as much to say about these two as we still don't know very much about them or their roles in the film, but we do have these images from the display and a semi-front-facing shot. Along with this, we have their character sheet for the film. The character sheets seem to follow more of Toriyama's modern style, while the figures better fit the models in the film. Overall, I think they look very accurate in sculpt, and I'm curious to see where they'll go with this release. But that's about all I have to say for these two and the movie figures as a whole. So, let's move on to the rest of the New York Comic Con related news. For the first time since 2012, we are getting a completely new Cell figure. Not a reuse, not a repaint, but a wholly new sculpt for first form Imperfect Cell. And so far, it looks quite good. The sculpting is spot on and the colors seem to work well. The one thing I can't really comment on yet though is scaling, because we don't really get a proper sense of his size in comparison to other figures here. Overall, it seems to be a great depiction of a character people have been wanting as a figure for years. It's just such an interesting character design and so important in the history of Dragon Ball. Of course, around him we see the full power Super Saiyan Goku, Premium Color Perfect Cell, and Cell Shell, which we'll get more into later. Now, we'll be coming back to First Form Cell soon, but I wanted to take a moment for the previously mentioned Tamashii Nation Online, which was a huge Tamashii Nations event, spanning many different lines beyond just Figuarts. But this is the Dragon Ball Figuarts News Roundup, so that's what I'll be talking about. As I said, we are back with the First Form Cell, and a much more clear and bright image, better showing off its sculpt and colors. It's much easier to mention the quality of the sculpt here, especially with each of the little spots actually being indented in. But alongside the First Form Cell here, we actually have Dr. Gero, also known as Android 20. Now, Gero is another character people have actually been wanting as a figure for years, despite the fact that he's probably one of the less popular Dragon Ball villains. But his design is unique and people have really been hoping for him. Just like with Cell, this seems to be an incredibly accurate depiction, fitting the likeness of Gero very well. The transition from character to figure seems to be very smooth. But for Cell and Gero, that's about all I have to say. There are a couple more images of these two floating around on the internet, but I'm sure we'll be seeing more about them at some point. I'm honestly curious to see what will be done with these two, especially with Cell and the different expressions he could have, or maybe we'll be able to remove Gero's hat and see his brain. But that's just speculation. But now, to move on to something both less and more intriguing, we have the Cell Shell. You see, Tamashii's been going all in on showing this thing, with it being displayed at just about every recent event they've held, and with absolutely no indicator of what it actually is. Chances are that this will definitely be packaged in with another figure, but they just refuse to show it, which makes me think that it has to be something important, something people are looking forward to. And since we've already seen First Form Cell with no indicator that those two are related, and I don't think they would use this for a Second Form Semi-Perfect Cell, I think that leaves two main options: a 2.0 Perfect Cell or a 2.0 Trunks. Now, don't quote me on that, unless I'm right, but to get either of those two figures would be an absolute win for Dragon Ball collectors. Few figures have been as widely requested as a 2.0 of the original Future Trunks, and Perfect Cell is the figure I think stands to gain the most from a 2.0 iteration. Trunks would also be the perfect announcement Tamashii could make, as it helps further round out the group of figures they've been releasing for the Android saga, and, if it comes with the sleeveless shirt and a removable jacket, would finally complete the Chala Head Chala display they've been showing. Well, either way, I'm curious to see what will come of this. But let's move ahead to a huge double announcement with Gohan and Krillin from the Frieza Saga, also shown at the Tamashii Nation online event. Once again hitting right on the mark with two highly requested figures. These two came as the final reveal of the Grant Your Wish on Planet Namek project, which Tamashii held on their Instagram page, which will be linked below. They created a hashtag for people to post photos of their figures, along with a wish for whatever figures they wanted to see made the most. In the end, they took these posts and put them together into a mosaic. And here's that final image, which I think looks really cool. I honestly regret that I never posted anything for it, even though I have an Instagram page almost exclusively dedicated to figures, but life's gotten in the way recently, so I wasn't able to. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see more clearly that, yeah, it's all different Figuarts posts. I will include a direct link to this mosaic in the description as well. I recommend checking it out. And now for Gohan and Krillin, I do have what I'd say are probably the two most relevant comparisons to make. On the left, we have the currently released Kid Era Gohan, and on the right, we have the upcoming Krillin, Earth's Strongest Man. Now to start off with Gohan, the currently released Kid Gohan figure comes with two interchangeable head sculpts, one that can basically be used for either the Saiyan or Android sagas, as well as one for the Namek saga, as seen in the image here. However, the actual sculpting of the figure did not account for these different depictions. As you may see here, the body sculpt is very tall for Kid Gohan, scaling the figure most accurately with the Android saga, when Gohan was 10, as opposed to the Namek saga, which took place about 4 years prior. So the figure really seemed most geared toward an Android saga or Chala Head Chala display. The Namek saga head and Dragon Ball were nice inclusions and placed him with the rest of the Namek saga line, but more could have been put in to actually have him fit in with the saga visually as well. However, that seems to be completely solved with this new figure, which looks to be perfectly made for a Frieza Saga Gohan. With the saga unique outfit and overall sculpting, it's an amazing translation of what the character really looked like at that point in the series. This figure basically firmly places the current Kid Gohan as an Android Saga figure and takes its spot as the definitive Namek or Frieza Saga Gohan. It almost makes one wish we could get a more specific Saiyan Saga Gohan, but I digress. One of the main things to look for with this figure now is whether or not it will be coming with a smiling face sculpt, something that many noticed was completely missing from our current Kid Gohan. Maybe, just possibly, we could be able to swap the heads or faces of these two figures, but we'll really have to wait and see on that. On the other side though, we have Krillin. And I think this is just another case of how good Figuarts has become at depicting characters in their specific saga iterations. Krillin, as a character who is drawn very differently throughout the course of the story, is perfect to represent this. These are two figures of the same character, and they definitely give off the same Krillin vibe, but they also manage to be completely distinct. Even subtracting the totally different outfits, just the head sculpts themselves perfectly represent their respective sagas. Honestly, Krillin is just such an amazing character and design to lend to action figures, and has so far been done amazingly well by Figuarts. At the end of the day, while yes, these figures are marketed towards collectors, are very expensive, and breaking one is a matter worth crying over, these are basically toys, and are meant to be fun. I think Krillin perfectly encapsulates that. Now with these two, as well as his kid figure, I think the biggest Krillin designs left to adapt are the ones from the Saiyan Saga and Dragon Ball Super. All in all, these look to be two incredible figures, and I'm really happy that Figuarts has decided to go down this saga stylized route for the Dragon Ball figures. It really makes each one of them that much more appealing to own. But to keep on the topic of Krillin, let's shift focus slightly to that Android Saga figure. As we can see here, we have a few new images of the figure to look at, with photo credits for these three display images in the bottom right, as well as linked in the description. So far, the quality of the figure and the articulation we've seen are high enough that the faults I may have had with it previously, I think, are mostly forgiven. I think the figure looks more and more appealing with every image of it released, and I honestly can't wait for it. If you're more curious about either my thoughts on the figure or its general release information, I will link both my first roundup where I talked about it, as well as an online listing of the figure in the description below. It is a general release, so once it does come out, you may be able to find it in stores. Before we fully move on from Krillin, here's one more display image of him alongside Piccolo, Trunks, Goku, and Cell, with Cell notably being the only figure here with 1.0 articulation. Just another cool shot I thought was worth including. But now, we can move on. So here, we have a few new images of the upcoming Frieza figure, same photo credits as before. Once again, if you want to hear my overall thoughts on the figure, along with more general release information, I'll link both my second roundup and a listing in the description. Just like Krillin, it will be a general retail release, so you'll hopefully be able to find it in stores. I really don't have very much to say here. I think the figure still looks pretty good, and as always, we'll really have to wait and see how it'll look in hand. Though I'm not as excited for it as I am with Krillin, I'll probably still try and pick it up. especially since it is much less expensive than most Figuarts generally are now. Now, for this last segment, I wanted to go over a few events that have occurred since the last roundup. Firstly, from November 26th through the 28th, San Diego Comic-Con Special Edition was held. It was a bit of a smaller event, but I do believe a few of the figures we've discussed here were shown there, so if you can find those images online, they're pretty interesting. Secondly, Tamashii Nations continued its streak of opening pop-up shops, raising exposure to the brand in different cities and creating a more direct, easier way to purchase products. This shop in Mexico City opened on November 6th and closed November 27th. More information on these pop-up shops, like when and where they open, can be found on the Tamashii Nations Instagram page and website, both linked in the description. Finally, a pop-up shop was also opened in Barcelona on the 26th of October, and is actually still going. So, if you're in Barcelona, Spain, or are just comfortable with making the trip, you still can. However, I do not know when exactly it will close, so it may not have a lot of time left. Either way, like I said before, more information regarding pop-up shops, their dates and locations, can be found on the Tamashii Nations Instagram page and website, both linked in the description. And that will be all for our Dragon Ball Figuarts News Roundup. I hope it was informative and maybe somewhat entertaining. I know this ended up coming out way later than it was supposed to, so I apologize for that. I'm really hoping to get into a proper schedule with these videos, so hopefully the next one will be out by the end of January. But that's them. For now, I hope you have a good day, good night, good week, good rest of the year, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.